Desmond Rutledge, we need you to step outside with us.
For what? I haven't done anything wrong?
The wallet from the checkpoint on the 29th.
For years, people trusted Desmond Rutledge with the contents of their suitcases every single time they flew. Every single one of them was wrong too.
That's not what that was. Somebody left that in, lost and found.
Left it in your truck? You don't know what you're talking about. You need to check your...
He would not get his story straight before backup arrived. Within an hour, 3 transportation security officers working the same checkpoint at one of the busiest airports in the country would be in handcuffs, accused of running an organized theft operation out of a federal security line. Investigators would eventually connect the group to more than 100 incidents and $68,000 in cash and valuables stolen directly out of travelers' bags. What started as one officer's hand disappearing into a stranger's suitcase would end with a federal security director calling in an integrity sting nobody working that shift saw coming. The number you just heard? Sit with that for a second. Type it in the comments if it shocked you. Subscribe if this is your first time here. The full story is worse. Desmond Antoine Rutledge was born in 1989 in the Liberty City neighborhood of Miami, Florida, the second of 4 children. His mother worked the cafeteria line at Charles Drew K-8 for 18 years. His father loaded container ships at the port of Miami until a shoulder injury ended that work when Desmond was 11. Money was tight enough that the power got shut off twice one summer, and Desmond remembered his mother heating water on the stove so the kids could bathe. As a kid, he was fascinated by the airport. His uncle drove a shuttle bus for a rental car company at Miami International, and on slow Saturdays, he would let Desmond ride along the service roads, watching planes lift off 200 feet away. Desmond told his cousins he was going to work there one day in a real uniform with a badge. He kept a shoebox under his bed filled with boarding passes his uncle handed him off the shuttle floor, discarded ticket stubs from passengers who never noticed a kid collecting them, and for years that shoebox was the closest thing he owned to a passport. He graduated from Miami Northwestern Senior High in 2007 and spent the next several years working retail security at a mall in Hialeah for $9 an hour. Then 2 years as a valet at a hotel on Brickell Avenue. In 2016, at 27 years old, he applied for a transportation security officer position at Miami International Airport. He passed the background check, the physical evaluation, and the required screening assessments, and he was assigned to Concourse E, starting at $16.75 an hour. His first 2 years were unremarkable in the best sense of the word. Supervisor evaluations from 2017 and 2018 described him as reliable, showing strong attention to detail, and noted he consistently caught prohibited items other officers missed. He was cross-trained on X-ray interpretation, pat-down procedure, and behavior detection. By 2020, he had been promoted to a lead position on his shift, responsible for rotating newer officers through different stations at the checkpoint. Co-workers from that period remember him as the guy who organized the pool for March Madness, who brought his kids' cheer competition trophies in to show people, who covered shifts for officers with sick kids without being asked twice. In 2019, Rutledge received a Regional Officer of the Quarter recognition after talking down an agitated passenger who had missed a connecting flight to his mother's funeral, walking the man through an expedited rebooking process himself, rather than passing him off to an airline counter. His supervisor's written commendation described him as demonstrating exceptional composure under pressure and going well beyond the requirements of the position. He married his high school girlfriend, Renata, in 2019, in a small ceremony at a banquet hall in Opa-locka that his mother helped pay for. They had 2 children, a boy and a girl, and bought a 3-bedroom house in Miami Gardens in 2021, financed with a mortgage that ate close to 40% of their combined income. Renata worked part-time as a dental hygienist, and between her hours and his, childcare alone ran them close to $900 a month. Their son was enrolled in a travel basketball league that required its own uniform fees and tournament travel costs, and their daughter's competitive cheer program, the same one whose trophies Rutledge proudly showed off at work, billed the family close to $200 a month between practice fees and uniforms. None of it was unreasonable for a family of 4. All of it, together, was more than a transportation security officer's salary was built to comfortably absorb. Therefore, the pressure was already there before anything else happened. Rent had become a mortgage. A used minivan had become 2 car payments. And a security checkpoint that funneled thousands of unattended bags past him every single day had become, without him fully admitting it to himself yet, an opportunity he had started to notice. Miami International Airport is one of the busiest international gateways in the United States, moving more than 50 million passengers a year and, during peak holiday travel, well over 150,000 people through its checkpoints in a single day. Concourse E's screening area is one of the airport's highest volume checkpoints, built to process long lines of connecting international travelers as quickly as possible without compromising security. The system works like this. A passenger places their bag into a plastic bin on a conveyor belt. The bin moves through an X-ray machine while the passenger walks separately through a body scanner several feet away. For a window of anywhere from 10 to 45 seconds, depending on how backed up the line is, a traveler's most valuable possessions sit unattended in a bin, visible to, but not directly watched by the very people responsible for screening them. Transportation security officers are trained to open bags that trigger an alarm on the X-ray, remove and inspect specific items, and repack the bag before sending it down the belt. That procedure requires an officer's hands to be inside a stranger's belongings dozens of times an hour, for reasons that are completely legitimate right up until they aren't. Bags that trigger a second alarm get pulled for secondary screening, a process that moves them off the main belt entirely and into a side table where an officer conducts a hands-on search away from the main flow of the line. It is, by design, one of the few moments where a bag leaves a passenger's direct line of sight for an extended period, sometimes a full minute or more during a busy rush. That side table exists to protect passengers from threats they cannot see. It also, as this case would prove, gave a dishonest officer more time and more privacy than any other part of the checkpoint. The checkpoint's cameras were built to catch threats, not theft. They point at the X-ray monitors and the walk-through scanners, not at the officer's hands inside open bins or working the secondary screening table. Supervisors reviewed footage when an alarm needed a second opinion or a passenger filed a complaint. Nobody was reviewing footage looking for officers stealing, because as far as management knew, that wasn't something that happened at Concourse E. Nationally, SAW fields thousands of passenger property complaints every year, the overwhelming majority involving officers who never took anything at all. That statistic is exactly what let 3 officers hide inside it for months. Travelers trust that system completely. They hand over a bag containing a laptop, a wedding ring, cash for a trip, sometimes an entire family's passports, and they walk toward a metal detector, assuming the person on the other side of that X-ray machine is there to protect them. That trust is the entire foundation the checkpoint runs on. It is also, as investigators would eventually prove, exactly what 3 officers at Concourse E had learned to exploit. The first documented incident traced back to February of 2023. According to the investigation that followed, Rutledge worked a bag containing a men's watch and roughly $300 in cash. Rather than repack the bag completely, he set the watch aside inside the bin, palmed it during the repack, and slid it into his cargo pocket before the bin moved on. Nothing happened. No alarm, no supervisor, no passenger complaint filed before the flight had already boarded. Therefore, within weeks, he tried it again. By spring, Rutledge had recruited 2 younger officers on his shift into what investigators would later describe as a coordinated system rather than a series of individual thefts. 20-year-old Rico Fenwick, newly certified and eager to be liked by a lead officer, learned to run what the group called blocking, positioning himself directly between a passenger and their bin during the highest value part of a bag inspection, asking unnecessary questions about laptops or liquids to hold a traveler's attention for an extra 15 or 20 seconds. 23-year-old Selena Vega worked the secondary screening line, flagging specific bags for additional inspection that gave Rutledge extended, unsupervised access. The method was clinical once it was running. One officer would identify a bag worth targeting, typically a designer handbag, a hard-shell case, or a bin with visible cash or jewelry. A second officer would engage the passenger in conversation at the walk-through scanner. The third would work the bin itself, opening a zippered pocket, removing the item, and either pocketing it directly or setting it inside a folded jacket kept nearby for exactly that purpose. They escalated because nothing stopped them. What began as an occasional watch or a folded stack of bills became a routine. By April, working the secondary screening table had become the group's preferred method, since it removed a bag from view for close to a full minute at a time. On April 19th alone, according to the eventual case file, the 3 officers used the secondary table to remove cash from 4 separate bags across a single 8-hour shift. By June, the group was targeting an estimated 4 to 6 bags a week between the 3 of them. Text messages recovered later showed them coordinating in real time, one member texting when a high-value bag was approaching, another confirming the checkpoint supervisor was occupied elsewhere. The proceeds were split roughly evenly at the end of each shift, usually in a bathroom stall or the employee parking garage, away from any camera. By late May, the group had grown confident enough to target checked items beyond cash and jewelry, including, in one documented case, an unopened box of prescription medication a passenger had packed for a 2-week trip, later recovered unopened from Vega's locker. No single theft was large enough to trigger a formal fraud investigation on its own. The signs were there, and no one connected them. One coworker later told investigators she remembered Rutledge showing up to a shift in May wearing a watch none of them recognized, joking that his wife must have finally let him buy something nice for himself, and thinking nothing more of it at the time. A cluster of theft complaints from Concourse E had been filed with airport police over 5 months, more than double the volume from any other checkpoint at MIA. A supervisor noted in an internal memo that Concourse E's complaint rate was worth monitoring, then moved on to the next item on a long shift report. Rutledge, meanwhile, made 2 cash purchases that stood out only in hindsight. A used Rolex Submariner bought off a resale site for $2,800 in cash, and a full engine replacement on his truck, also paid in cash, at a shop 2 miles from his house. But the pattern, once someone finally looked for it, was impossible to miss. By late June, the volume of complaints from Concourse E had reached MIA's federal security director, whose job includes overseeing the conduct of every transportation security officer at the airport. After reviewing 5 months of passenger complaint data alongside checkpoint staffing schedules, one detail stood out. Nearly every complaint traced back to shifts where Rutledge, Fenwick, and Vega were working the same rotation. Rather than confront the officers directly and risk tipping them off, the federal security director contacted the Miami-Dade Police Department to request an integrity test, a controlled operation designed to catch dishonest employees in the act using bait they could not identify as bait. Miami-Dade Police coordinated the operation with MIA's federal security director over 5 days, selecting June 29th specifically because staffing records showed all 3 officers would be working the same rotation that morning, the same pattern that had first drawn attention to the checkpoint. On June 29th, an undercover Miami-Dade detective, posing as a connecting passenger, approached Concourse E carrying a black leather bag containing a GP's tagged wallet loaded with marked $100 bills and a designer watch with its serial number logged. The detective placed the bag in a bin and walked through the body scanner exactly like any other traveler. Surveillance cameras, repositioned days earlier at the direction of MIA police without the checkpoint staff's knowledge, captured what happened over the next 90 seconds. Fenwick stepped toward the detective and began asking about a laptop that did not need to come out of the bag. At the same moment, Rutledge unzipped the bag's interior pocket, removed the wallet, and slid it into his own pants pocket before repacking the bag and sending it toward the scanner. The GP's tracker inside the wallet began transmitting a location the moment it left the bin. For the rest of that shift, it moved with Rutledge, through the checkpoint, into the break room, and eventually into the trunk of his personal vehicle in the employee parking garage. Therefore, what had been a theory for the federal security director became, in less than 2 hours, a documented crime with a location signal attached to it. Miami-Dade detectives obtained a search warrant for Rutledge's vehicle and his home the following week. Inside the truck, they recovered the marked wallet exactly where the GP's signal had placed it, along with a duffel bag containing 7 additional items later identified by other passengers as stolen property, including a child's tablet, 2 pairs of designer sunglasses, and a gold bracelet reported missing 11 days earlier by a traveler connecting through Concourse E. Digital evidence built a timeline. Recovered text messages between Rutledge and Fenwick, spanning roughly 4 months, documented the operation in the group's own words. Fenwick, bin 2 looks heavy, Louis bag, hold up Rutledge. On it give me the laptop line Fenwick. Sub-checking clear for 10 mins Rutledge. Good watch by the belt buckle. Nice one Fenwick. Supervisor by gate 8, heads up Rutledge. Got it moving to the table now. Financial records showed Rutledge had made 11 cash deposits over 4 months totaling $9,400, none of which matched his TSA salary or any documented secondary income. Fenwick, once presented with the surveillance footage and the recovered text messages, agreed to cooperate, providing a recorded statement describing his role as a lookout and admitting he had personally pocketed cash on at least 6 occasions. Investigators also compiled nearly 20 minutes of checkpoint surveillance footage into a single evidence file, showing the 3 officers working in coordination across 11 separate incidents between March and June. One traveler, a nurse from Ohio, connecting through Miami on her way to a medical conference, told detectives she had reported $600 missing from her wallet in late June, and had been told by an officer at the time that she must have miscounted before boarding her flight. Her missing bills matched, dollar for dollar. Cash recovered from Rutledge's truck. A second traveler, a college student flying home to Georgia after a study abroad program, told detectives a pair of noise-canceling headphones and $40 in euros had disappeared from her backpack in May, and that she had assumed she simply lost track of them in the rush to make her connection. Both items were later recovered from the duffel bag in Rutledge's truck, still in their original packaging. The smoking gun was not any single item. It was the combination of the GP's tracked wallet inside his vehicle, the text messages naming specific bags by brand and contents, and 5 months of complaint records that all pointed to the same 3 names on the same rotating shift. On July 11th, at 6:42 in the morning, Miami-Dade detectives and MIA police approached Rutledge in the Concourse E break room as he clocked in for his shift. "Desmond Rutledge, we need you to step outside with us," the lead detective said. Rutledge set down his coffee. "For what? I haven't done anything." "The wallet from June 29th. We have it on GPs, and we have you on camera." His shoulders dropped half an inch before his face caught up. "That's not what that was. Somebody must have left that in a lost and found bin. I was turning it in. Turning it in to your truck. I move things around sometimes. Evidence gets misplaced. That's not what you think it is. 11 other bags say it's exactly what we think it is." He didn't answer that one. His hands, which had been steady on the coffee cup 30 seconds earlier, were shaking slightly now, and he glanced once toward the door before an officer stepped into the frame. "I want a lawyer," he said finally. "I'm not saying anything else." He was handcuffed in the break room at 6:47 a.m. in front of 6 coworkers arriving for the same shift he would never work again. We're about to get into the courtroom. Before we do, leave a comment letting us know where you're watching from and consider subscribing. We cover cases that mainstream media ignores. Miami-Dade prosecutors charged Rutledge, Fenwick, and Vega with organized scheme to defraud and multiple counts of grand theft